Viendo este crecimiento de nivel en Superliga, ¿vaticinas algún cambio importante de cara a Riot Games? ¿Te refieres al tema de audiencia? No lo sé. Yo me imagino que en Riot se juntarán y dirán, oye, qué curioso que ahora mismo, por ejemplo, Carmine Corp e Ibai hacen que la competición, tanto la española como la francesa, tengan 100.000 espectadores, a veces 200.000 espectadores. Esto es muy raro. ¿Cómo podemos aprovecharnos de eso? ¿Cómo podemos conseguir que tengamos esto también en LEC? ¿Cómo podemos trasladar este éxito que estamos viendo aquí a nuestras competiciones? ¿O cómo podemos amplificar esto? Porque claro, hay el partido de COI de cuartos de playoffs tuvo más de 200.000 personas, pero el de Bisons tuvo 40.000. Entonces es como, ¿se puede replicar este éxito? ¿Podemos aumentar esto? ¿O no? O sin embargo no lo podemos hacer, ¿vale? Esa es mi duda. Hay muchas opciones, se pueden ampliar las plazas, se pueden hacer un millón de cosas diferentes, pero no es fácil. Llevarse a Koika Corp a Alec explotan los números. Supongo que sí. Bueno, supongo que sí. La pregunta es, ¿podría Koi hacer co-stream si está en la LEC? Es que no lo sé, tío. Es que esa es mi gran duda, tío. Hay un vídeo de Mad Lions que también quería comentar, pero la verdad es que el vídeo es bastante meh. O sea, el vídeo no me ha gustado nada. Este vídeo de Mad Lions, en donde dan explicaciones, no me han gustado nada. Porque lo que comentan en el vídeo, os lo voy a poner aquí de fondo. Lo que comentan en el vídeo es que... ¿queréis que lo veamos? Es un vídeo... eso.
Hi everyone, Mac here. And I'd like to take a minute to have a discussion about this split, about some of the things that perhaps went wrong this split.
¿Lo leéis bien? ¿Lo leéis bien, gente?
We can do better going into the next split, and generally give our fans an overview of what happened this spring split. Looking in hindsight, there were many things that we obviously could have done better, and I want to start off by saying that clearly these results are disappointing. It's disappointing to miss the playoffs. It's something that's never happened to me in my career so far. It's something that's never happened in the history of Splice or Mad Lions. And to put it simply, it's not up to the standard.
Tiene puesta la música de Interestelar, muy flojito.
We expect of ourselves. And it's not up to the standard.
¿Por qué no habla Willy?
Our fans expect of us.
Willy no tendrá apenas contacto con el club.
Firstly, I'd like to apologize to our fans for that. Let's look a little bit at what actually happened, and I can give you kind of a rough timeline of events and my overview of what happened this split to get to this position.
Vale.
So I think initially, while things did go well for us, over the course of the split, it became more and more apparent that we struggled a lot to close out games, even with large advantages. And this is something that we did put a lot of work into fixing, and we tried to do this from multiple angles. However, ultimately, we were too slow to identify certain critical problems.
Vale.
In the end, the critical problem...
O sea, que al final, al principio era que sacaban ventaja, pero no sabían cerrar las partidas. Y a ver qué dice ahora.
Was our team fighting, which I think we did put a solid 2 weeks of effort into towards the end of the split, but it was too little, too late.
Y luego lo que dice es que el tema es que no sabían teamfightear, pero cuando se dieron cuenta de este problema, era demasiado tarde.
I think there were improvements, but not quickly enough, and ultimately that failure is with me. Initially, we understood these problems as symptoms of lack of broader game understanding, mid to late game shot calling, communication, generally strategic and knowledge understanding related questions. And
en general, temas relacionados con conocimiento estratégico.
Strategic and knowledge understanding related questions. And this is the approach which we tried to use to tackle these problems. So we spent a lot of time this split working on our mid to late game shot calling, our communication, and generally speaking, studying the mid game.
Que estuvieron trabajando el shot calling y demás.
This was not ultimately the correct approach, and while there were some improvements, they were not the key improvements that were needed for us to be able to close out games. We ended up realizing was that there was a big problem with the way that we were team fighting, not only from...
Dice dos veces lo mismo, ¿verdad? O sea, es que dice dos veces lo mismo, ¿no?
A kind of knowledge and understanding perspective, but also from a human error perspective, in the sense that we, as a team, were not going in the same direction in team fights. We were not united. We didn't have the same ideas or understanding of how we wanted to play team fights. And we often ended up with people going in many different
Que
directions.
las peleas cada uno iba por su lado y que no se entendían.
In team fights or even after team fights, which ended up costing us very dearly in lots of positions. And frankly, we were just too slow to identify that on a coaching level. And so, as I said, that failure ultimately does lie with me. I think that is
¿Ha dicho 2 veces lo mismo?
the biggest thing that I would like to mention for the general overview of the split. And going forward, I think that there needs to be a bigger balance, especially when we look at the...
Aquí es donde a mí ya me empieza a parecer un poquito complicado. O sea, de cara al futuro, creo que hay que encontrar mejor el equilibrio, sobre todo en lo relativo a la parte humana. Ahí fue cuando yo dije, ¿what?
When we look at the human side of things, I think there were many things that we could have done earlier as a coaching staff to make sure that the players felt they were on the same page with each other, and that is one of the most important things required.
O sea, lo que entiendo yo que está diciendo aquí el head coach de Mad Lions es que los jugadores no tenían confianza en sí mismos a la hora de jugar. ¿Sabes? Que era como, no, parece que no tienen confianza.
In my opinion, to be a good League of Legends team. So certainly paying more attention to the human aspect of that rather than a purely strategic aspect.
Esto...
So certainly paying more attention.
Centrarse más en la parte humana
human aspect of that rather than a purely
que en el aspecto puramente estratégico
aspect of that es
una de las prioridades que nos pondremos de cara al próximo split. A ver, llevo 3 minutos y medio de vídeo, pero aventuro un fracaso similar al de Mad Lions esta temporada, en verano, si creen que el problema es este. O sea, si creen de verdad que el problema es este, creo que se equivocan. ¿Crees que el problema ha sido Ricker? No, creo que el problema es que estaban muy confiados de que iban a llegar a playoffs y ya en playoffs iban a ganar la Superliga. Eso es lo que pienso. Eso es lo que pienso. Lo que pienso es que ellos estaban confiados de lo que iba a pasar y ya está. ¿Me explico?
One of the big learnings that we will take forward going into next split. I think it's also worth mentioning some of the ongoing philosophy and some of the ongoing decisions that past, present and future decisions that Mad Lion has taken and Mad Lions will take in the future from a broader strategic perspective. Now, I'm of course aware that there have been a lot of criticisms of individual players and a lot of criticisms of the overall roster that Mad Lions has put together this year.
Es cierto, ha habido críticas, es cierto.
Worth putting that into context in a historical sense with what we've done in the past. Our philosophy as an organization has been, and my philosophy as a coach and that of our whole staff has always been and will always be, to invest into people, to invest into coaching and to develop talent. And that's an approach which has given us a lot of success.
No me parece una mala estrategia decir vamos a formar jugadores.
In the past, and I think when you put into context how much benefit we have seen from that approach in the past, it really speaks to how amazing some of the rosters we've had in the past and how amazing some of the results we've had in the past have been. Going to Worlds with 4 rookies in 2020, for example, winning the split last year. We have made, and we have consistently made, high-risk roster decisions. And that's not something which is going to change.
Dice que para ellos también es importante desarrollar talento y que han tomado decisiones arriesgadas, que eso no va a cambiar, y yo estoy de acuerdo con eso.
Now, one of the drawbacks of that is that you will sometimes have bumps in the road, and this split has obviously been a bump in the road. That's something that
Guille, tranquilo,
comes with the nature of how we decide to build our rosters, and that's something that is also ultimately, it's a responsibility that ultimately lies with me. However, it's something that is not going to change. Mad Lions is going to continue to invest into young talent. We're going to continue to develop talent.
No me parece mal, no me parece mal que Mad Lions quiera ser un equipo que desarrolle talento, pero hay que saber cuándo te equivocas, claro.
Make the roster decisions that we feel are best for us holistically as a team in terms of the niche that individual players are filling within our culture, within our communication system, and on a human level. This is something that's really important to me, and this is something that we looked at very strongly this year coming in with the roster changes that we made. While I understand that our fans are of course frustrated,
No sé si
and of
dice
course
ya más
disappointed,
cosas interesantes.
we are also frustrated and disappointed with the results of this split. Been a lot
Aquí
of
ya-
individual criticism discussed, and some of which I can't go.
O sea, tengo la sensación de que han grabado dos discursos y han puesto los dos. Porque está repitiendo lo mismo.
Into, we have failed as a team on a human level, and that's I think the biggest thing that we need to go and take away into summer. And those are things that are impossible for anyone to see from an outside perspective, but they're things which I will fix. While we're still at a very early juncture, and there is not a large extent to which I can go into very specific details about what will be happening next split.
¿Qué ocurrirá en el
That's
próximo split?
a broad overview of what's happened so far, and how I see the problems that we have, and the mentality that I want to go into next split with. As a final note, I would like to say a really big thank you to all of the...
Sí, lo que... Ok, pues muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, Mac. Yo creo que es un error que no se tendría que haber... No tendría que haber sucedido, pero que en el caso de suceder, solo puede suceder una vez. Solo puede suceder una vez y ahí está. Vaya, es lo que hay. Flaque de estado en Mad Lions Madrid. Si es así, poco talento retienen. Claro, pero a lo mejor si Mad Lions no veía a este señor, a Flacked, como alguien mejor que un Forgiven, pues no hay nada más que decir. No hay ningún problema en eso, ¿eh? Yo no veo ningún problema en eso. Cada uno toma sus propias decisiones. Cada uno toma sus propias decisiones y poco más. Ya está.